interesting because I pride myself on trying to get everybody's name right. And some of the ones that I think are like super easy, I always get wrong. And it's like, really? Come on. So, but and this one I
No.
was sitting there, I was like, oh, is it Ferrara? Is it Ferrara? Like different ways to pronounce it. And everybody
Yeah,
consensus was like Ferrara.
I get Ferrara all the time, or like I'm like just Ferrari with an A, like
Yeah,
it's not hard.
that's funny. Uh, awesome. So, yeah, let me close some of these windows down because I don't need all these windows open.
Okay.
And
So Tom, where are you actually based?
so I am in Waco, Texas.
Nice. Oh my God.
Yes, yes,
I like
yes.
Texas.
The hope is one day to get to Tennessee. Well, I say one day, like within the next year or so, I'm hoping to get out to Nashville. It's I've been here about 4 years at this point, and it's time. I've been saying I'm gonna move to Nashville for the last 7 years.
Mhm.
And so it's just kind of like, okay, I need to like actually do it. So
Dude, my anniversary was yesterday, and I've been here
nice.
6 years, so
Yeah, it
it's
was,
it's just one of those things you just know and then you go, you know?
yeah, yeah, for sure. I was looking through, I think it was an Instagram post talking about your 6 year anniversary. And I was like, that's really
Yeah.
cool. That's because, a lot of people don't hang around. Like they'll give it 2 years, and then it's like, they'll realize, okay, Nashville isn't really where I want to be, or Nashville isn't for me.
Yeah.
And so just like once you I think Nashville is kind of like once you get past that 2 year mark, you're either going to know you belong there or it's
Or
time to
you
go
don't.
somewhere else.
And it's a 10-year town for
Yeah.
music. So if you're not doing stuff by like, it's
Yeah.
just one of those things. But
Yeah.
I've been here for 6. I've only been doing music like this for 3.
Yeah.
Technically. I've been writing for a long time, but like I didn't really jump in until like year 2, year 3,
Yeah.
and then COVID happened and COVID really pushed a lot of things along. So post COVID, I like took off.
Yeah. Well, we've just kind of jumped right into the podcast. So I'm going to just keep this rolling.
Perfect.
Welcome everybody to the live cast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet. We've got a very special guest. We got Sam Ferrara joining us straight from Nashville, originally from Long Island. I've You're actually the second person from New York, maybe even second person from Long Island. I'm trying to remember where the guest was specifically from yesterday because she said near Long Island. So I don't know what that
Okay.
means.
Well, that could either mean one of two things. She's from the city or she's from like Westchester area or upstate. So, and upstate is not near New York.
Yeah.
Westchester, I could say yes, but
Yeah.
I am like born, raised, and Long Island bred.
Nice.
But
That was the first thing that I picked up about you was you had that New York, Long Island confidence. It like because I talked to a lot of people from New York and like a lot of the bigger cities, and there's this certain bred of confidence that growing up in a big city like New York or Chicago or LA or Miami, well, maybe not so much LA, but there's a certain level of confidence that growing up in a big city kind of gives you. And that was the first thing I picked up about you was like, oh, she's super confident about everything she does.
you know what? It depends on who you work with and the
Mm-hmm.
people and how you're raised. And like I have two incredible parents who raised me to be like, do whatever you want and just believe that you can do it. And I'm like, let's go. So
Yeah.
I I I could say that like when I was younger, I was like, "Oh, I don't know, a little shy." But like honestly, once you're like, I can do something, I'm like, oh, I got this. Like I can just step into my own and just go for it.
Yeah, for sure. So growing up in Long Island, what was that like for you growing up in Long Island?
Long Island is its own breed. Like if you're not from there, some people are just like, "Oh, I don't get it." And it's its own thing. I mean, I have a lot of friends that still live there. Um, you know, school was close by. Um, I had really great teachers who raised me and did really well. Like I was very close with my family. I'm still very close to my family, so I go
Mhm.
back every couple months to just visit my family and see my friends. Um But really, like, I started music when I was younger and like elementary school. I was taking like private lessons. And then my choir teacher was like, "Oh, you have a really good voice. Let's just give you a solo here." And
Yeah.
honestly, everything took off from there. And I ended up learning to play the clarinet, which, let's be honest, when you actually picked in the fourth grade, you got like three options.
Yep.
What did your girl pick? Your girl really wanted to pick the drums.
Right.
And I ended up getting blocked out. They're like, "Yeah, no, we got too many of those people." And
Yeah.
being a band teacher, I know exactly what that's like, where you get all the kids like, "I just want to play the drums, boom, 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 boom." I'm like, no,
Yeah.
not everyone's gonna play the drums. You gotta have
Yeah.
the rhythmic
Yeah.
sense in you, and like the technical stuff.
Mm,
So it pains me sometimes to be like, you can't do it, but I
right.
think you're a better fit for here. And that's what I was told. And I ended up falling in love with the clarinet anyway. And played that for a while. Then I like when I was in middle school and high school, I picked up other instruments. So I
Mm,
was picking up the saxophone, I was picking up the bass clarinet, I was picking up all these different instruments that I ended up falling in love with or teaching
mm,
myself. So I'm predominantly a woodwind player for the most
mm.
part. Like, I'm not your typical country artist who's playing guitar or piano normally. Like, I do play piano, I'm not super great at it.
Yeah.
I can do like chords and stuff and hold my own, which is fine. But guitar, that's actually one of my biggest regrets growing up is I wish I actually played guitar better. I took guitar lessons before I moved to Nashville,
Yeah.
and I have friends who give me some lessons here and there here. And once I pick it up, I'm like, okay, this isn't as bad, but I have a guitar that's too big, so I can't get around it
Right.
at like someone normally would. Um, but I wish I had picked it up sooner because I think it would have been so much better if I
Right.
did. But it's all right.
Hey,
I went to school. I went to college for music education. Originally wanted to perform, and ended up let me do the safer route. Let me have something where I can have a secure job in case anything ever happens.
right.
Kind of lost my way because I was like, okay, wanted to continue in education, and I went through a lot of hurdles to get my degree, get my license. And then at the end, I was like, I should be performing. Like, what am I doing here? One of my biggest influences is Hunter Hayes. I love his music. I love his songwriting. He's a multi instrumentalist. And when I saw him, I was just like, man, this is me. It's just in male form. And my mom turns to me and she goes, "You knew this is what you're supposed to be doing the whole time. So, like, what are you doing here?" I'm like, "You're right." And after that, I ended up taking a trip to Nashville for a conference, finished my degree out, and I was like, I need to be in Nashville. This is
Right.
insane. Like, I fell in love with it here. And I worked about 5 years just kind of between writing, coming back and forth to Nashville, making new friends, getting my master's degree, doing all that before I actually ended up moving here in 2017. And then while I was here, I was teaching, I was writing, performing, the
Mm.
pandemic, and we're here right now. So
Hey, and you brought up that you're a band teacher now as kind of like your day job.
I
Okay.
actually just left my position. It was
Yeah.
on good terms, of course.
Yeah.
But I left to actually pursue music full time.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I I wanted to jump back to that really quick because I thought it was very funny the universal nature in which every fourth grade class got introduced to like band and all that stuff. Whereas like you could play the clarinet, you could play the cornet, you could play the flute, and then you had like a sax section and then the drums, but everybody wanted to play the drums. And I'm like,
Oh yeah.
because it was I when I was in fourth grade, that's what I wanted to do was play drums. And everybody's like, nope, we've got too many drum players. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll play the sax. And
Oh, I
I
love
just couldn't get the for whatever reason, just trying to play a woodwind instrument didn't sync with me. I couldn't get it to I just couldn't understand it. And then they're like, well, we'll put you in, and they gave me the cornet because that was a brass instrument. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And then just I didn't want to practice. So I was like, all right. So I fell out of it real
that.
quick. So
Yeah, that tends to happen. I had kids that were like, "Oh yeah, like I'm really good at what I do, but I don't want to practice." And I'm like, "Guys, I said if you don't practice, you're not going to get better at it." Like
yeah.
I told them like, "What, I've been playing for as long as I can remember. And
Hmm.
my biggest thing is like I practice, and I was my mother will tell you this. She always had to be like, "You need to practice." And like everybody said that, but I was like, "Yeah, like I'll practice when I need." But I knew right away like, okay, I actually have to work on this and practice. And practice makes you better. Like
Hmm.
I think there was something that it was said when I was in college. It's like if you practice it's like 10,000 hours or something, you're a master at your craft.
Hmm.
And it's so accurate. Like the more you practice, the better you're getting at it. So I always was like very I pushed it so much, even though I was like the poster child of I don't like to practice. But
Right.
like
Yeah.
because you're sitting there hours and hours, and then like there'd be times I would get frustrated. I have to get up and leave, or I'd have to and be like, okay, let me come back. But usually when that happened, I'd get whatever I needed right away, and then I was like, okay, that's it. But I spent like hours a week practicing so I could be better at what I do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
It
it,
it it's not like I wasn't against practicing. It's just for whatever reason, the music, playing the cornet just wasn't something I wanted to practice. Like I was more athletic. I liked being outside and all that stuff, and just the
yeah.
idea of being cooped up in a room to play. Uh,
Yeah, and you know what? It's not for
yeah.
everybody, which is okay, and I say that. I've had kids before that have come into that have come in and are just like, "Oh, I don't think this is my thing," and
Right.
they either really love it or they don't.
Yeah.
And I don't get upset at those kids. And they're like, "I don't want to make you upset, Miss Ferrara." And I'm like, "You're never going to make me upset." I said, "Music is not for everybody. You either
Yeah.
have it or you don't." And that's okay. I still like you as a student. I still like you as a person. I want you to excel in what you're the best in. I'm not
Yeah.
going to force you to do something you don't want to do. That is not fair to anybody. And there were some times where unfortunately I had to, and it was a real bummer. Like the parent was like, "Oh, I want them in here," or like I'd have higher ups tell me, "Oh, you need this many people." And I'm like, "It's not about," and that's the thing. Like I
Mm.
wish people would understand. It's not about the quantity of people you have. Quantity is great.
Hmm.
Okay? You had like 40 people, that's amazing. But it's not about the quantity. It's about the quality of what you're
Hmm.
getting. And I could never get that point across to people. And when we're in schools, it's all about numbers, it's all about this, it's all about that, it's all about these things that they want to put in statistics. They want everything in a row, and it's like this is not what it's about.
No.
And I wish it was about the quality. And that's what I made the perspective at. I had very small classes,
Yeah.
or like I had small enough classes. Like I don't think I had a class bigger than like 32, 33 kids. And I was very lucky. But I had students that wanted to be there, that were quality, that were like, we're going to put this all together and we're going to make this great. And that's what it's all about. And that is what I prided on. So, like, you could have as many as you want, but are you going to be the best band, or are you going to be a band that falls flat? You
Yeah.
know?
100%. 100%.
So,
And so did you start teaching once you moved to Nashville, or were you teaching still out in New York?
so while I was getting my master's degree, I was a substitute teacher for about 4 years.
Hmm.
And probably about 8 months before I left, I got a leave replacement and then got offered a position 2 weeks before I moved to Nashville to do full time. And they're like, "Oh, we want you to come full time. Like you were awesome." And I was like, I said, "Too bad I've already like signed my lease to move to Nashville." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Wait, what?" And like I didn't even tell anybody. I was like, "Yeah." And it's a bummer because I built it's not now. I don't regret it
Hmm.
because here I am in
Yeah.
Nashville living the life I really, really wanted to live.
Yeah.
But I, I did so many things in New York. I taught private lessons. I had subbed. I was a part in New York. There's we have like Broadway and like
Hmm.
community theater on Long Island where you do community theater. And I was a part of that particular family, and I did the pit orchestra for a bunch of theater companies on Long Island. So I had built a lot of street cred there, and was doing a bunch of shows all over Long Island. And I worked 5 part-time jobs on
Hmm.
top of subbing and going to grad school. And for me, I was like, I built this life. And I was like, great. Like, I have this life. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Everything is great. But
Hmm.
I knew the minute I was like, okay, I'm moving to Nashville, like, everything like turned a switch. And it's like, wait, now I'm going to start all over again
Yeah.
somewhere else where I didn't really know. And I didn't really know people. And I had a few friends that were here. So luckily enough, it was good. And then eventually, I made the friends that I have now, but
Hmm.
it just was one of those things. It's like you knew when everything was like, now finally, it was like after all this time, it was like, oh, it's right there. And I'm like, but it's not in the place that I really wanted to be.
Yeah.
So I had to say no. I had to turn things down. And I was like, ugh, I said it hurts, but I think now, what would my life have been if I did say yes and I ended up not going? Like, I would never be here. I would never be doing half the things that I was
Mm.
doing. So I am thankful for those opportunities, and I'm thankful for the people that gave them to me, because it actually did help set up to where I was now, where I am now, where I was at that
Yeah.
point before I had gotten my full-time job, which was not too long after I had moved here anyway. Like, I had interviewed right away.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that transition, and then they emailed me and they were like, "By the way, we need you here next week, like, to start." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay." Like, it was
Yeah.
very short summer, to say the
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
That's got to be a tough position to be in because you're in Long Island. You've done all this groundwork to kind of build a relationship and build a reputation in Long Island. And knowing it's not really where you want to be, but you put in all this legwork, and then you kind of get the opportunity to come out to Nashville. You kind of see that opening, and then you just take that chance. I think a lot of people need to learn from you because it's like, no, yes, you're building all this groundwork in one place, but if it's not where you want to be, then when the door opens, you need to walk right through.
Absolutely. You have to capitalize on it. And if you don't capitalize on it, that you're gonna miss that chance.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely. So you've been in Nashville now for about 6 years, or not about 6 years exactly.
cheers.
uh, how's Nashville been treating you? Obviously, you spent the first couple of years just kind of writing music, and then you mentioned earlier that you've really only been doing music full time for the last 2 or 3 years, correct?
Yeah, so I've been thankful for all the time and all the friends and everything that's been happening in the last 6 years. And originally, when I moved here, I was like, okay, first year, let me get my feet wet,
Mhm.
let me see what's around. Went out to watch different people, went out to network. My roommate at the time, who I'm still friends with now, was helping me network with different people. And then and I just focused on my job at first. And then when I came back from the summer, I usually would have spent my summers on Long Island. Now it's not as much.
Mhm.
Um, but year two, I came back. I met one of my really good friends and one of my co-writers, and we just like clicked really well. And he's like, "Hey, let's write." And I was like, "Okay, let's do it."
That's
And we've written a ton of songs together, and we have a really great friendship. And he had just moved at that time too. That was my second year there,
Mhm.
and it really, I'm like, was one of the first few people that he had met. And so we just kind of hit the ball running. And before we knew it, like, COVID was here, then we
Mhm.
had the shutdown, and we were working on a ton of songs already. We were like, let's take the time to just kind of revamp. We had
Mhm.
already started talking about, let's record, I'll produce. Okay, fine. Great, let's do it. We finished a bunch of the songs during the pandemic. I did a lot of workshops.
Mhm.
I'm a part of NSAI in Nashville,
Okay.
in their chapter, and I had done their Rise program, so I got to work with other artists from like all over the country and
Yes.
some in Nashville. And we I had written with people that I didn't know and was having songs listened to, and it was just really good to just get to work with industry professionals and
Mhm.
listen to what advice they had and just kind of like go off the cuff on that. And then I did the program again, but it was like an advanced program with
Mhm.
Liz Rose. So I got to work with Liz Rose, and that was absolutely, absolutely remarkable. And I'm so grateful that I did get to do that. Um, and and then I just got involved in other things, and I think September 2020, I had to go home
Hmm.
for family things, and then came back and said, let's just go. Let's just record.
Hmm.
We need to go. And just built up so much rep and just
Yeah.
music and recording. And by the time after Christmas happened, everybody was like, we were just like, all right, should we go? Should
Yeah.
we start
It's
gigging?
time
And
to go. Yeah.
we did. At first we had to keep it a little quiet because, with COVID, it was still a little like weary and like
Yeah.
performing behind like plastic sheets and
All
all
that
this
way. Yeah.
all this crazy stuff. Believe me, it was wild.
Yeah. I'm sure it probably was even worse up in Long Island where, because like I know they had it way earlier than a lot of places and like had you had to stay in Long Island during that entire yeah, that would have been.
I mean, I was in Nashville most of the time, but I
Hmm.
was able to travel back and forth. Now, the restrictions really actually, I had like, we were all locked down.
Hmm.
And the what's it called? I went back in July,
Hmm.
and literally the day after I flew back in July, they like threw all these restrictions up, and I was like, no way. Like
Yeah.
it was nuts. And I was there for about 2 weeks, which was good. Now, I wasn't really, and I will say this, I'm like probably the first person to say this. I've other than doing like house shows on Long Island,
Hmm.
which I've done like my own, I've never actually really gigged on Long Island or have
Hmm.
done like a show, and I'm really trying to like kick down a door to try and make that happen because I have so many of my friends and family that are like, I want to come see you play. I think the only real shows I've done are have been in New York City. I've
Hmm.
played at the Cutting Room for oh my gosh, Urban Country Jam,
Yeah.
which is run by Lauren Davidson,
Hmm.
who's from New York City. And those have been so much fun because I get people like friends that have come from like Connecticut or the city and
Hmm.
just come down and like watch, which is cool. And I opened for a friend of mine at Arlene's Grocery back in the fall. But other than that, like I've not done anything on Long Island. That's kind of like
Yeah.
I'm trying really, really hard to do it because I have
Is
so many friends that are like, yes, I want to come, but
it
they won't come.
is that because of lack of like venues, or is it just like really hard to get gigs in Long Island?
I have been I have been, it's just hard to just get
Yeah.
anything booked.
Okay.
I mean, I've had trouble here with like booking solo shows and stuff, and honestly, I have to go in person, introduce
Mm.
myself, and be like, "This is what I want to do," and usually it's getting booked,
Mm.
no questions asked.
Yeah.
But that seems to be where I'm running into some issues, but I'm trying to navigate in the best I can, and I've been guided where I've been like, "Oh, talk to this one," or "Oh, talk to that one," and I've been trying, and I'm just like, I run down to like the last minute, and I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah.
not what I like to do because I like to give people like some advance
Mm.
warning.
Yeah.
But
Nice.
I mean, I do also like putting on house shows and just having people come to the house. Just come to my house and I'll
Yeah.
play music for you. And it's been great. Like I've had a lot of people turn up and show up, and it's been cool.
Because that's what is a house show vibe like for you? Is it a lot more chill with friends, or what's that kind of vibe like?
Yeah, people just come bring, we have like some like pick food, or
Mhm.
like I did when the first version of Whiskey Memory came out. So we
Mm.
did two different versions of that and two different versions of Get Out of My Town. But that was like my first song ever to come out. I was just like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm doing a party at my house. Come out, come hang out." People came, they brought some like, "Oh, congratulation gifts," and
Yeah.
like hung out, we barbecued and whatnot. And then I threw on a live stream and I just said, "Everybody come into the den," and we just like I played the song for them. I played some other songs they haven't heard before.
Mm.
Um, I had my friend play for me, which was great, and we just kind of like jammed out for like 45 minutes to an hour, and people really enjoyed it. And then like people hung out afterwards and
Mm.
then went home.
Nice.
So it was cool. So that way, like I was able to mingle and talk to people and all that.
Nice. That's really cool. And
Yeah.
that was in Long Island.
Yeah, that was on Long
Yeah.
Island. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. I say in, I should say on. I'm sorry.
It's okay. There is a lot of confusion with that.
Uh,
I I might get pegged later on that from
yeah.
some friends. They'll be like, "You know what to say." I'm like, "Do I?
That's
Do I?"
funny. Oh. but it's kind of interesting that you're able to get shows in the city, but on Long Island where you're from, it's like pulling teeth.
Oh, I can't make this up. It's wild. And people are like, wait, but what about I'm like, don't
Don't
ask.
ask. And uh,
Uh
you brought up Lauren Davidson, which we had her on the podcast. Oh, 2, 3. It was like early on during the pandemic. We had her on. Which that's really cool that you that's kind of connect. Like I'm starting to realize all the connective tissue of everything of a lot of the people we've had on the podcast. That's kind of cool. So being in Nashville, obviously you kind of start you when you make that decision. Let's go here. When you make that decision to okay, I'm ready to. I've been writing. I want to record and produce my music. Who are you listening to? In like, how are you going through the process of deciding what kind of music you want to write?
so I'm somebody who grew up with country music. I mean, I to be honest, I literally listen to everything and anything. I think the biggest thing I kind of don't listen to as much or as frequent is rap. And that's not to say like rap is an art and a talent of itself. I have some friends that are rappers that are incredible here. Okay. It's just sometimes it's not my cup of tea. It just depends. I have to be in a specific mood to listen to that.
Yeah,
Like I work out and usually working out to rap is that's tight.
yeah,
So, but predominantly, like for the most part, I just love country music, and that's something where I'm telling the you're telling the truth, you're telling the story. Um, Sometimes in some of the other songs, it's harder to depict and tell a story from what's being said or how you're trying to tell the story. Like I
mhm,
know everybody that writes songs, and this is not putting any nail into anybody saying you're not a songwriter. Everybody is a songwriter. Everybody has a story behind their songs. I feel like country it stands out a little bit more. And I grew up listening to Trisha Yearwood and Tim
yeah.
McGraw, Kenny Chesney, like that's like my childhood is just listening to all of them and I love all that music. So those are the stories that I want to tell. Now, with the music that I have, like,
Mm.
and even writing, some days it's like, oh, let's come in and write a country song. Oh, let's just come in and write whatever. Like, I've written, now that I've been writing a lot more with people, I've written some pop songs. I've written R&B. I
Mhm.
actually am currently working with an artist who wants to break the boundary and do popra, which is pop and opera and mixing it together,
Wow.
which is so unique and really cool. And I like being on the ground floor of things. That's something I'm
Nice.
really, really, really proud of. And and something I want to do with some of my newer music that's going to come out moving forward. But I have an album that's coming out called Piece of Me on
Mm.
July 28th, which will finally be revealing the cover. Did I say
You said July 28th.
yes, July 28th. I'm sorry. Something I was like, what? July
Yeah.
28th. Yes, I want to make sure I said that correctly.
Yes.
And cover will be revealed next week and all this fun stuff. But um for me with this album, it's all the parts and pieces of my life, of my story, who I am,
Mm.
what I grew up listening to. And it's genred is country, but we'll be 100% honest. I am trying to kind of break boundaries a little
Yeah.
bit and I flex to do different things.
Nice.
So, Love's Got a Way of Letting You Down is more jazz direction
Hmm.
versus country, but I call it jazz country because that's kind of what I want to do right now. Um, and it's cool because like we did four different versions of it. One version is an acoustic version, one version is the regular version. Then we did like a in the club version where it's like in a
The in the
jazz
club
club.
version is the one that I found very interesting. And it was just yeah. So
Yeah. So we did it as like we're in a jazz club. Like
mm.
I you look at in the club and you're like, "Oh, like in it like it's going to be like a breakdown EDM
Yeah.
thing." And I'm like, No, not that type of club." Would I like to? Possibly, potentially down the road, but I want to do it based like from a jazz club where you're like passing off like all these different instruments. Like I went in and I tracked sax and I had my buddy from New York track trumpet and like it kind of crossed, like, imagine being in a jazz club and you're hearing this song and like everything is like you're hearing all these different things. So it was pretty cool to just kind of do something that's so off the cuff and different.
Hmm.
Um, but there's that. Then I have like some songs that are just singer-songwriter or just country or just like country pop, like Waiter or Get Out of My Town. Like some stuff is like rocky a little bit, more
Hmm.
like, which is gonna be like there's a song called Black Kettle, which really gets into that. And then it's like big, like we added like the instrumentation for like almost a big band sound too, which is really cool. And everything, it just so bounces back and forth into like different genres that
Hmm.
like it really could be anything I wanted it to be. But this is just something that like these are all the parts of me that I grew up listening to or things that I really like, and we just channel different inspirations from different artists and different songs that we listen to. We're just like, okay, we're gonna do, we're gonna theme it in this way. Where that's the kind of direction I wanted to go into. That's how I want to introduce myself as an
Hmm.
artist and have people hear me and be like, oh, she could do anything if she
Right.
wanted. So it really like leaves that door open for album two, where now we're talking and we're in the beginning stages of talking about album two, and we
Hmm.
have songs that are in the down the pike and ready to go. And I'm talking about going more in a 90s country directional like bass, like but more
Hmm.
modern day, where we are incorporating more of these instruments. I'm incorporating saxophone more into a lot of these songs. That seems to be the trend, or it was the trend for a while. Now that trend is coming back, and that's
Hmm.
something I bring out to my writers rounds and I test out. And people are like, I love this about you. You need to
Yes.
keep doing that. And I said, well, shoot, I will keep doing it if people keep loving it. So and then I did a thesis in my master's program on incorporating bass clarinet into country and bluegrass music. And that's something I'm really, really passionate about and know that it's possible of happening. And we tested out different songs and tracked different things so that way it could be heard and you could hear the difference between an upright bass and a bass clarinet, which the sounds are very similar. It's just a matter of all the technique that goes
Hmm.
behind it. It's completely different technique versus playing an upright bass. Upright bass, you're just standing there slapping bass, pretty
Yeah.
easy. Bass clarinet, I have to make sure I'm like constantly breathing, doing slap, all these different techniques that you have to like learn to be identical to an upright bass. But it's something I want to incorporate into the next chapter, and that's something I'm really truly passionate about. That I was like, this is an idea. Why not be the first to do it,
Yeah.
right?
For sure.
So I'm
Gotta
excited.
You gotta watch out for those traditional bluegrass uh aficionados because they're not gonna be happy that you're trying to bend their genre. So that's one thing that I've learned. I went to so back before the pandemic, we used to go to a bluegrass festival down in the Keys every January,
Sure.
and there was always these bands that would come in trying to bend the genre of bluegrass to like incorporating like drums or different things, and like
Mhm.
the traditionalists would come in and be like, oh no, this isn't bluegrass, this is something else. And it's like, really, this is the game we're playing right now.
Yeah, I know that's probably something I'm going to at some point run into. And I mean, I tread water lightly on that,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, I actually ended up going, was it the Picking Under the Patio or whatever? They do it's like a bluegrass night. They do like once a month out at close to Highway 100 at like
Mm-hmm.
Percy Priest, I think, something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And they get all these bluegrass musicians to come and like hang out. So I went one time with my friend. I was like, "Well, let's go." She goes, "Bring your bass clarinet. You never know what's going to happen." So I did, and
Mm-hmm.
I ended up jamming with them, and they were all looking at me like, "What?
Yeah.
You could do that? Like, that's cool." Like
Nice.
they were really impressed, and they're like, "That's so unique." They're like, "We want you to come back and try it and
Nice.
just keep jamming with us." And I was like, "Cool. Okay." So people dug it. So it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if we get to the point where the traditionalists will be like, no, but like you have to
But
open your eyes a little bit to
yeah.
like new things and change. It's nothing like drastic. The colors of the wood are very similar too on both instruments.
Yes.
depends on where it's coming from and who's whatever and
Hmm.
manufacturer and all that. But honestly, it's doesn't hurt to try something new.
For sure. 100%
I'm
agree.
like I sound like Keith Urban saying that. Like I saw an interview where he was talking about things being modernized and he goes, "Doesn't matter. Genres have no boundaries." And I'm like, "You know what? He's right.
This
Genres
is,
don't have any boundaries. Like music can be whatever you make it to be because that's what
yep.
it's all about." So, it almost reminds me of cooking and I excuse me, and I absolutely love to cook.
Yeah.
When I have free time. And the biggest thing, and I was saying this to a friend the other day, I was like, it's almost like you're making something new. It's a whole creative process. You're making what you want to make, you're making what you like to make, and you're adding all the extra spices in, and that's the things that are your touch, and then voila, it's something brand new, something
Right.
different.
Nice.
You know, like you can
Yeah.
either stick to the same recipe for the rest of your life, or you can make that recipe and upgrade it
Yeah.
just a little extra and
Oh
be
yeah.
like, ooh, be the one that stands out, you know?
Yeah.
You don't want to
For
be the
sure.
one that's standing in the curtain.
Yeah.
Some people
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
You hear a lot. I love our male country artists, but some of the male country artists, and you're listening to some of these new artists, and it sounds very the same.
Hmm.
Sounds like everything that's out there. So to our industry people in country music, like, do you want the same thing out there all the time, or do you want that extra sprinkle of something new? Because I know there's a lot of people in this industry that are working real hard and doing some really great stuff that are
Hmm.
not being seen, you
Yeah.
know?
100%. And I ultimately think that's why I started Live and Amplified, was because it started off, I was living out in Roswell, New Mexico, and the whole intent was to showcase all these great musicians that were in a small town in southeast New Mexico that takes you 4 hours to get anywhere, to the next big city or whatever. And then we started to grow and realized, oh, it's not just small towns. It's even in Nashville. It's in Austin, like all these major cities where there's all this great music, but nobody's getting a light shined on them. Like,
Right.
or it's such a small light that they're really not getting seen like they should be. And so hearing you talk about that just reaffirms, like, yes, this is something that needs to happen. We need to keep reinforcing the innovators and the creators. And yeah, so.
Absolutely. And if you're not, those people are going to go away.
Hmm.
And then you're just going to have 100 Morgan Wallens or a
Hmm.
hundred Blake Sheltons on the
Yeah,
radio.
yeah.
You
And
know, do you want a
yeah,
hundred of them or do you want a multitude of different people? You
right.
know?
And I think the pandemic really hurt the music industry. Like, I mean, yes, it did, but like just all the really innovative creatives that were like just barely making it, they just packed it up after the pandemic, or during the pandemic, and was like, all right, well, I guess my dream's over. I'm gonna go get a 9 to 5, and that'll be it for now. And some of them haven't come back. So.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of different stories about that too. Some people, it helped them be a little more creative and write things that we didn't even know
Hmm.
probably could have existed if it wasn't for that. So the I believe the pandemic was a blessing and a curse.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter which way you look at it.
Yeah.
Granted, it sucked being locked up for
Yeah.
however many months we were locked up for, but you and I had to look at it when we got locked down. Do I capitalize on this or
Mm-hmm.
do I go into a slump and never come out of it? And honestly, I was at a point in my life where I was just like, I need to capitalize on any chance I can get here. This is the first time where I'm not, at the time, I really wasn't doing anything for work other than making care calls.
Hmm.
And we really didn't start teaching efficiently virtually until the fall.
Yeah.
So, and doing all these different workshops. So, like, what can I do? So I capitalized on
Hmm.
it. I
Yeah.
capitalized, I wrote, I did everything that I needed to do, and it was good for me. I went and worked out every day too, like,
Yeah.
a couple miles in the school in front of my house here and went hiking, like and it was the first time I could ever say I had time for myself.
Hmm.
where I wasn't like going and never like then hit a brick wall and I get sick and then I have to stop everything
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
It was the first time I had nothing to do where I was like, what can I do? And I did all the things that I love to do, and I got to cook every day, and I got to my house was like super clean, and
Mm.
I went through the mail, and I went running, and I did all these different things. I got to hike. I got to, see my family when I could. Those are the only people I was really in contact with. I talked to my friends just about every day, every other day, like, or at least like went through a rotation. Some friends we sat on the porch and like and had a drink here or there,
Yeah.
you know. So worked on different like small projects around the house. And did music. So like I was able to capitalize on a lot of different things that I never really get to do, and it actually made me realize how important it is to take care of myself because
Hmm.
not everybody is taking care of themselves.
This is
And
true.
I
Very true.
I am guilty. I am guilty. That was like the first 2 years was all about work, 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 work. I literally could have had a bed at my job and
Mm.
slept there. Almost did a couple of times. But I was like, I could sleep, I could wake up, I could do all these different things. I was like, I need to prioritize me. And that's after 2020, that's what I started doing. I prioritized myself. I put music first, I put me first, and I'm
Hmm.
not somebody who normally puts myself first. I put
No.
everybody else before me. I mean, I've digressed a little bit since then, but I do definitely take time for myself. Like, I'll go, if I have to go to the store, I'll like go somewhere I really want to go, or like, take myself out on a date night. Like I
Mm.
love doing stuff like that.
Yeah. It's that was definitely something that I took away during the pandemic was I needed to start sitting with myself and figuring out even if I even liked who I was, because you kind of get stuck in that rotation of just go, 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 chase after the dream. And it's like, wait a minute, do I even like myself in this position? Do I even like who I'm becoming? And so that just made me really sit back and be like, okay, I need to chill out here. I need to ramp up over here. And, after I got out of lockdown, because for my job, I was locked down to like November 2021. Like we were working remote for like a year and a half.
Wow.
And so it was an experience. And of course, in 2021, we went through some family medical issues. My mom was passed away from cancer during the pandemic, and so that kind of threw a monkey wrench into a lot of things. But
Sure.
kind of going back to what you were saying about doing all these things that I've kind of neglected, like the pandemic being a blessing and a curse. It's like, yes, I couldn't get out to go to shows, but it forced me to take the podcast on Zoom because had I not moved everything to digital over Zoom, A, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. And B, Live and Amplified probably wouldn't be in existence because there wasn't going to be anything we were going to be able to do. So,
Right.
you know, luckily we had made that transition and it just kind of blew up. It's really crazy how it just kind of happened.
Yeah, man. It's nuts. I it was so quick.
Mm.
We had, and especially in March,
Mhm.
I was like prepping for an observation and everything else, and then woke up to tornado warnings, and we had the
Yeah.
tornadoes
Mm.
here. That
Yep.
literally happened the week before we were locked
Yep.
down.
I
And
remember. I remember that. That was bad.
yeah, I had to. My mom came in the morning after. I picked her up. She was here for a couple of days. Went, got my friend. My friend stayed here a couple of days,
Mm.
like, because his house was in all the wreckage.
Mhm.
They were okay, thank God. But
Mm.
like, we went and helped out down at the Donaldson Christian Academy,
Yeah.
which that place was white.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my
The
gosh, that was
2020 was a terrible year for Nashville, just in general, because it's like,
yeah.
I so the last time I was in Nashville was in 2020. I went January 2020, and
Mhm.
then like, because so basically I was in Texas and we were going to go down to that bluegrass festival I was telling you about, and so I was like, well, I haven't been to Nashville in a while. Let's make roundabout trip from Waco, Texas up to Nashville, and then we'll cut down to Florida. And so we get back from that trip. And then almost immediately after that, they're starting to talk about COVID and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh crap. Okay. And so like for like a month, because I work for a news station. So we were getting like feeds from everywhere about that. Like, oh, hey, COVID, could it be coming all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so for like a month prior, it was like, okay, so if this comes here, what do we do? Like what's going to happen? And then the thing in Nashville, or the tornado in Nashville happens. And I'm like, dang, okay. And then we shut down from COVID. And I was like, dang. And then wasn't there also an explosion in Nashville later on that year?
Yeah. So not only did we have the tornadoes,
Yeah,
which happened,
yeah,
I had flown home for 24 hours,
yeah,
came back because I had to be back for work,
yeah.
literally said to my kids like the day before, thinking we would be back the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, take home your instruments just in case something happens. You
Yeah.
never know what could happen, whatever, then you have it and you're set.
Mm-hmm.
And then literally that night went to Live Oak to see Walker Hayes and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot, and got a notification saying school's closed the rest of the week. We're going to go into spring break and we're going to monitor the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into like, my boss happened to be in there the next day,
Yeah.
and a couple other people because they were just kind of like cleaning up the classroom, whatever, because it was spring break.
Yeah.
And my boss was like, take what you need because I don't think we're coming back. And I was like, what? And
Uh,
so I took everything I needed. I had to end up going back for one more thing, and then like they actually like locked our buildings until May or June,
oh
till the
wow.
end of May, when
Yeah.
we had to do like textbook returns and whatever else, and we did a drive-by graduation, which was
Yeah.
like the oddest thing I think I could actually say in my book. It
Right.
was so yeah, so the summer happened. We're teaching virtually. I had gone home for Christmas because Thanksgiving, my parents ended up getting COVID that Thanksgiving. So we didn't go home for Thanksgiving. I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
first year I did not go home in a long time for Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And went home for Christmas, turn on the TV, and they're like, "Oh, there's a bombing." And now I was like, or it was like a year later or something like that. Yeah, it was in
Yeah.
2021. Went home that Christmas. I had a friend here, staying with me for a bit,
Mm.
and literally was like,
Yeah.
turn on the TV. I'm like, what is going on? And like it was just absolutely wild. And they're still doing the construction on all that now. Like they're still working on it. Like some
On
of the
the
buildings have opened up again,
mm.
but not everything on Second has opened.
Are they still doing construction from the tornado as well, or is that all pretty much kind of cleared up?
I think the tornado stuff is pretty much cleared up. I think that was cleared up for a while
Okay.
beforehand. Like you could definitely see the transition from when the tornadoes happened because I used to like drive up to Hermitage all the time
Mm-hmm.
from because it did rip right through Hermitage too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you saw the transition of everything. Now I think it's in a good spot where everything is good, but you
Okay.
totally can tell where everything had happened still with like the
Yeah.
trees down and stuff like that. But and I think I haven't been over to the Donaldson Christian Academy in a hot minute, but I think
Mm.
that area looks pretty good too. It was just the whole thing was wild, but the bombing was
Yeah.
insane. Like I texted my friend. I was like, "What happened?" She goes, "I have literally no
No.
service anywhere because
Yeah.
it blew out all of AT&T
Yeah. That's
service."
wild.
I was like, it was nuts. It was
Uh,
nuts to watch on TV, and they're like, "Did you know this?" I was like, "Nobody knew this was gonna happen." I was like, "This is," and I had friends like, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm on Long Island, but I'm
yeah.
fine." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh!" So
Yeah.
that's not too far from where I am either. So
Yeah. As I just remember, like you said, seeing it on TV, and I'm like, what the heck is going on in Nashville right now? Like it was crazy. But yeah. So I'm glad everything is cooled down. 2022 and 2023 has, knock on wood, been good for Nashville.
oh
Um, but so you're fully into your making music, writing music. You're in the full release stage of this upcoming album, the end of the month.
yes,
Um, Is there any more singles coming out, or was Waiter kind of like the last one?
Waiter was actually the last one, believe it or
Okay,
not.
gotcha.
So I had recorded this album with a different engineer, and we had to go back in and we went and kind of like cleaned up some stuff, redid some things here and there. Not to say our past engineer, he did a great job. And actually, one of the tracks had to Love's Got a Way Letting You Down. The
Mm,
original version is the one that actually is the only one we did not touch, but because that was solid the way it
yeah.
was. But super thankful for what we did with him, but it helped to elevate and produce and
Mhm.
have what we have now, which is great.
Nice. What's kind of running through your mind as you approach the final couple of weeks of the release for the upcoming album?
Just making sure everything gets out
Right.
on time. That's really it.
Fair, fair, fair.
And
You got
accurate.
everything. You
Okay.
got everything submitted to Spotify and all that stuff already, because I know they're very, very
Yeah,
picky.
that was done a while ago. I
Okay.
think the only thing we ended up doing a little edit change on the cover, on the
Hmm.
album cover, but that's about from the promo to now. So that's really it. But honestly, everything's up and ready to go. I'm just like, some of these streaming platforms, it's really hard to navigate. So
Hmm.
it's like making sure everything gets out right and gets out to
Yeah.
the right people. But with enough time, everything launches pretty well. If you're
Yeah.
launching like in a hurry, then it
That's
like
yeah.
oh it trickles out and then it's like terrific.
Yeah, that's been the one of the constants that I've seen with a lot of musicians that I've talked to is like they have this idea for the album and then they try and get it out as quickly as they can and they have like the hard copies ready, but then Spotify's like, "Oh yeah, we'll release it on this day," and then it doesn't release for like another week or 2 weeks, and then iTunes it's out already. Just like all these weird things happen, and it's really hard to kind of get everything squared away.
Yeah, even coming up with the plan was a whole thing. I had like three different dates and we just kept pushing things back.
Mm,
Because I also wanted to make sure that I had my full attention to this release as
yeah.
well. Because I wanted to make sure the rollout was right. I was fully aware and not having like other people do it for me.
Mm,
Like I have a small team around me that
yeah.
works really hard and they're amazing at what they do. But I've also said to this team, I'm like, I want to be hands on everything too. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to be left in the dark because I want to learn.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who now, as I'm getting older, loves to learn and educate myself on the things that I don't know so I can
Mm,
get better at them.
yeah.
And I will say, TikTok is one of the few things that I still can't manage and I still don't get, but we're getting there.
For sure.
Um,
TikTok
but
is one of the most annoying social media platforms, but it's almost a necessity
it
at this
is.
point. So,
Sadly, that's what it's come down to. But like, it's literally I'm sorry, I'm also eating breakfast at the same time. It is literally the stupidest things that peak.
yeah,
You literally
it's
have to do something extremely stupid for it to peak.
oh yeah, it's so funny because so I had earlier this year I had a TikTok account that was, I'm not going to say established, but I had been posting on it consistently for a couple of years. And I told one day I was just like, I started noticing like story times were doing really well on TikTok. And I was like, you know what? I've got some cool stories. I'll just start doing like little short, like 60-second, 2-minute story times and posting them. Right. And I did a couple and it would get maybe 1,000, 2,000 views, like pretty decent numbers for me. Right. And
Right.
then I told this one story about when I was living out in New Mexico. We had this idea of doing a documentary following a punk band on the tour of the Southwest.
Wow.
So, like, basically, they met us in Roswell, New Mexico, and we followed them for a few shows in New Mexico. Then they had a show on the Navajo Indian Reservation up in northern Arizona, and then we were going to finish in originally it was going to be in Vegas, and then we were talking about finishing it in LA because they had a thing lined up there. But as I'll explain here in a second, it all kind of went to hell in a handbasket. Um, so
Oh
we,
no.
so we get up to the out to the Indian reservation in northern Arizona, and there was a situation that happened where one of the concert attendees started getting fresh with our drummer, and the boyfriend didn't like that. So there
Oh,
was a whole situation there, and we essentially got chased out of town. And I started telling this story, and I got
that would,
attacked. Like I was because I like I've told the story several different times, and nobody said anything, nobody cared. But because I put it up on TikTok and I said this story, the entirety of northern Arizona decided it wanted to watch me tell this story, and they just were like, nope, that's what you get. You deserved it. You know, just like all these things. And then it started bleeding into other things, like my professional life outside of music, outside of live and amplified and stuff. And I'm like, all right, I got to delete this TikTok because this is starting to have other repercussions, you know?
right.
So, yeah.
That's nuts. I'm sure that probably trended
Oh,
every.
we had the first 24 hours, we had 30,000 views. And then I had left it up for like 5 or 6 days. We were averaging 10,000 views a day after that.
No way.
Yeah. Like it was
That's
crazy. I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, this, like, and I'm one of those guys where I 100% believe nobody can cancel you but yourself. But this was one of those situations where it's like, okay, it's starting to leak over into my professional life. I
it's
need to
got
pump the brakes on this. So,
yeah. Wow. That's see and Tea Talk. People
yeah,
love Tea Talk. I don't know
yeah,
what it is. It's
yeah,
like people are thirsty for other people's like
drama. Yeah,
drama. I will say I've seen some pretty good stuff on there, and I'm just like, ah.
that's funny. I was trying to figure out what your shirt said, and then when you kind of
Oh,
lifted up there, I was like,
spread love. It's the Nashville way. I love
"Nice,
Project 615. I have quite a few of their shirts. They're like great company here.
awesome." I've actually never heard of it, so I just saw that. And I was like, "Spread love." All I saw was "spread love," and I was like, "Okay, I'm kind of curious what the rest of that shirt says." So, but yeah. So you've been in Nashville now 6 years. You got the project coming out here in, was it 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Math is
Yeah, it'll
not
be
my
three
strong.
weeks from Friday. Oh my gosh. So
It,
crazy.
it's got to be exciting. Once you kind of get this album out, what's the plan for the rest of the summer?
So the rest of the summer, so I'm hoping to do some more shows in August. September, if I can get everything set to go. Uh, guess I'm gonna leak this a little early. I would love to do a couple of shows on Long Island and call
Mm-hmm,
it the Piece of Me tour.
mm-hmm,
I have a couple of friends that are do writers rounds and stuff that already are we've already talked about possibly getting booked. So I'll get to do some shows up in like the north for a
mm-hmm.
little bit while I'm on Long Island for a month because I'll be there for some other things that are
Yeah,
going on. Um I'll come back in October. I play the Bluebird again October 15th.
nice,
Um I have potentially a music video in the works, which will be my first.
sweet, nice.
So that will come out. Some of the other like bonus tracks that haven't been heard, that have been like exclusive, that I've been giving or sending to some fans, will probably be released towards the end of the year. I have talked about doing a Christmas song. If that happens, it has to happen now.
Oh, yep,
I don't know if it will, so maybe. And starting to record for Project 2, and hopefully in 2024, I'll be doing a lot more like full band touring. I'm
mm,
like building a band right now, um, of people that I really like and trust, and hopefully that will be the goal for 2024 and releasing. I need a new fix
yeah,
and starting to get into the push for the next album.
for sure, for sure. Keep me in the loop on that Christmas song because I always set this up so late in the season because every December I get this idea of, oh, hey, we should do a series of podcasts where we only talk about musicians that are releasing Christmas music. And it's always like November 20th when I get this idea and I want to set it up. And it's like, Dang it. Okay. And then so it always fails, but I'm really trying this year to start probably about September, maybe October. And because at that point, if they don't have Christmas music in the works, it's not coming out. So,
Yeah, that seems to be the case, and I know it's been something we've been talking about. I know I wanted to do something
mm,
along the lines of a Christmas EP or at least a Christmas song because I know
mm,
like around that time of year it's kind of cool to do one.
yeah,
Um, I've had some stuff pitched. I might pick one up. Um, we'll see. I wrote one. I would like to write some more. But I definitely love some of the songs that are like, your
yeah.
original
Hmm.
classic traditional Christmas songs. So I might just do a cover and just put it out. I'm not sure. I'm just kind of looking and just
Hmm.
kind of think about it. But
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's something that could be a real quick turnaround, but I do need to make some decisions quick and it all comes down to money.
Right.
So
100% agreed. But yeah, it's been an absolute blast talking to you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I didn't realize how long we've been going already because we just kind of jumped right into it. But since you were eating breakfast, what were you eating this morning for breakfast?
I had avocado toast for breakfast. That's
Okay.
actually like one of my favorite things to make at home. It's easy and it's quick. So,
Okay, fair enough. I was sitting there, I was like trying to get an eye on what you were eating because it's like I haven't quite eaten breakfast myself either. So it's just like,
sorry.
no, it's 100% fine. Like I'm trying this new thing where I don't eat until afternoon, where it's just, just because my dad was telling me that he did like the intermittent fasting thing and he lost all this weight. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not like overweight, but I'm not like a healthy weight either. So maybe I need to just kind of try that because I'll eat them from normally I'll eat from like the moment I get up until I go to bed, and that can't be good for you. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it was just something quick that I can like
yeah,
mash up and make pretty quick. But normally I usually have cereal, but I'm run my refrigerator dry. It sounds like a normal musician because I'm actually like going back out on the I'm traveling again in a couple of
hmm,
days. So I'm like, I don't want to buy something that's new and then it
yeah,
goes bad while I'm away. So I figure I'll just wait till I get back to get what I need. So I'm just fending for whatever is left in my refrigerator for right now.
100%. Agreed, agreed. So we were supposed to do this podcast. Was that last? Was it last week or was it 2 weeks ago at this point?
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be last weekend, but I
Yeah,
was
because you had a show in North Carolina, right?
I did. That was the first time I was in Raleigh, which was amazing, and I cannot wait to go back. I We made some new fans and
Nice,
friends, and it was awesome. Had a blast.
nice. That's really cool. I'm glad. I'm glad that you kind of reached out to me because that night I was just kind of like, I'm gonna do the podcast because I said I would, but I,
Nah, I just our bus call ended up being, or like travel call was 3 o'clock, and I was like, dang. I was like, I said to Tom I was gonna do the podcast, and I was like, ah, I was like, oh no. So I felt really bad, but I appreciate you accommodating me here.
Mhm.
Like, what a perfect time to do this. It's 4th of July weekend.
Yeah.
I've like surprisingly like all my plans changed today anyway because of the weather. They're talking about bad weather again today, which
Oh
is
no. Yeah.
very typical for Nashville. So.
Yeah. My dad's actually up in he's out in Western Kentucky right now. So he lives down in South Florida most of the time. And this year he was like, yeah, I'm gonna take my boat and go up the rivers in summer in Kentucky. And I'm like, okay, cool. And we've been talking for like the last 6 weeks about when I'm gonna come out there and hang out. And every time I say, hey, I got time this weekend to come out, oh, I'm gonna be working. It's like, all right, well, you can't hold this over my head that I didn't try and come visit because every time I give you a date, you're working. So yeah, but you know, um, so it's been an absolute blast chatting with you. Really appreciate it. If anybody wants to check out your music, any upcoming shows, just interact with you on social, any of that fun stuff, where's the best place to find you?
So you can find me at Sam Ferrara, Ferrara music. I will hopefully in the next week or so be launching my website. So
Nice.
stick around for that. I'm like in the final stages of getting everything together. It's been a very, very long process to get it all together, but that will be my dates will be there, everything will be there. but for the most part, I usually do post everything on the social. So but someone told me they Googled my name and they found everything they needed to know. So if you Google my name, you'll find me.
For sure.
Promise.
For sure. And then as we kind of wrap this up, there's two things that we do at the end of every podcast.
Okay.
First off, we're going to do That's So Random. And I have a random question generator, and I just ask you one random question just for shits and giggles.
Oh my gosh, I'm so ready for this.
What would you rather have? Unlimited sushi or unlimited tacos?
That's so hard. Those are the two things I eat the most. Oh! I would rather, oh, well, okay. I will say now I would definitely have unlimited sushi. I love sushi very, very much. I'm sorry to tacos because I love tacos too, but I probably would get very sick of tacos.
Yeah.
Okay, but there is a story behind this.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, I actually did have unlimited sushi when I went on a cruise as a child. And poor me got sick in the kids club because I stuffed it all so much and said, okay, I'm gonna run by, and like
Yeah.
ended up in a cabin for 3 days 1 or 2 days when we were in Alaska. It was horrible. I 0 out of 10 do not recommend you eating unlimited sushi on a cruise ship, but
Yes.
it also stopped me from eating sushi for about 10 years,
Yeah.
and then I started eating it again and I still love it. So unlimited sushi forever, just not on a cruise ship.
And financially, unlimited sushi just makes a little bit more sense because isn't sushi a lot more expensive than tacos?
Probably. It just
I
depends on what type of sushi you're getting.
This is
Now,
true.
I'm very specific to what I eat for
Fair.
sushi. Like, I like trying new rolls out, but there's stuff that I'm like the fancier rolls, I'll binge every now and then, but I like my spicy salmon, my spicy tuna, like those are amazing. I love those. And then you got like the whatever the spicy mayo. I love dipping
Yeah.
in.
Nice. Gotcha. And then the other thing that we do at the end of every podcast is we like to pass on knowledge to the younger musicians out there. So, what's one piece of advice you've learned through your time at Nashville or in Nashville, not at Nashville, in Nashville, that you'd like to pass on to the younger generation of musicians?
net Go out to shows and network. That's the biggest thing. If I didn't do that, I would not have met the people that I've met. I wouldn't be writing with the people that I'm writing with. Just do not be afraid to go out and network. I see a lot of people on groups saying, "Oh, I'm coming into town. Where can I like play?" Or like, "Who do I need to contact?" Just go out to a show. Just if you just got here and you want to make friends, come out to a show, see where everybody's playing. It's posted everywhere. Introduce yourself to the person that runs the round, make your face known
Mm,
for a bit, and then they'll start booking you. I
mm,
know many bookers that are like, I will not book somebody if they are not showing up. And it
mhm,
is true. It is so true. And I'm guilty because there are some rounds that I normally don't go to as often or
mhm,
whatnot because scheduling things.
mhm,
And I hate that because, like, I do like to go out and support my friends and support
mhm.
the people that have also supported me. But that is my biggest thing. Go out and network because it's the only way you're getting your face out there right now. And if you sit behind a computer screen, emailing, all this different stuff, people are just going to look at your email and say, okay, whatever.
Next.
Go
Yeah.
out and network yourself. That's
Yeah.
how you have to.
100% agreed. Couldn't agree more. But once again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute blast. Anytime you want to come back on, feel free to reach out and we'll stay in contact about that Christmas song because I'm not going to
Oh,
wait until
definitely.
November 20th to try and set that up. So, uh,
Absolutely, Tom. Thanks for having me. I'll come
yeah,
back anytime. This was awesome.
awesome. But once again, thank you everybody for tuning in. If you want to support anything Live and Amplified, liveandamplified.net is our website. That's where you can find anything and everything that we do, just to keep it short and sweet. But once again, Sam, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute blast, and we will catch you all later.
Bye.
Cool. Oh, stop. So many buttons.